Beijing has a crucial impact on Russia's war against Ukraine. That's what NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg declared during a speech at the Wilson Center think tank in Washington. He said that in 2023, Russia imported 90% of the microelectronics for its military-industrial complex from China. Soon at a joint press conference with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, the head of NATO recalled that China is on the list of countries that are fueling the largest armed aggression in Europe since World War II.
Our security is not regional, it's global. What happens in Europe matters for Asia, and what happens in Asia matters for us. And this is clearly demonstrated in Ukraine, where Iran, North Korea, China are propping up, fueling Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine.
Kyiv's Western partners are closely monitoring the actions of countries that are helping Russia continue its war against Ukraine. In particular, we're also talking about China, Blinken noted. Beijing does not directly supply Moscow with weapons, but it does provide critical support for Russia's weapons production. According to the Financial Times, among other things, Moscow is buying used Western-made production machines from China.
We're looking at countries that are supporting Russia's defense industrial base, which is allowing Russia to continue the war, including China. As President Biden's made clear, we have a real concern not with weapons being supplied by China to Russia. That's not what they're doing. What they are doing, as you've heard me discuss many times, is providing critical support to Russia's defense industrial base. Some 70% of the machine tools that Russia's importing are coming from China. 90% of the microelectronics coming from China, and that has enabled Russia to keep that defense industrial base going, to keep the war machine going, to keep the war going. So that has to stop.
The United States is trying in every possible way to turn China away from assisting Russia. Thus, in May 2024, Washington imposed sanctions against 20 companies from Hong Kong and mainland China. However, this did not help, and now, as the South China Morning Post writes, there are growing calls in the West to hold Beijing accountable for its support for the war. According to the publication at the G7 summit in Italy, U.S. President Joe Biden called on allies to introduce new restrictions against China.
Most likely, that part of the Chinese economy that is globalized, that is integrated into the international value chains, will remain open and will avoid cooperation with Russia, so as not to fall under secondary sanctions. At the same time, small clusters will be created closer to the borders with Russia, which will be excluded from the system of international financial relations, and settlements, transfers of goods, services, and so on will be carried out through these clusters.
In exchange for China's support, Russia pays, among other things, with its land. This is nothing new for the Kremlin. In the mid-2000s, Putin agreed to transfer the islands of Tarabarov, Vinogradov, Koreyski, Romashkin and part of the Bolshoi Suritsky Islands on the Amur River. In August 2023, the Chinese state-owned Stalin Map and Service presented new maps that classify the entire Bolshoi Suritsky Islands as Chinese territory. Now, according to Nikkei Asia, Moscow and Beijing are preparing for negotiations on the free passage of Chinese ships along the Tumen River, which flows into the Sea of Japan.
China has repeatedly urged Russia and North Korea to allow Chinese vessels to navigate the river to the Sea of Japan. Russia used to be reluctant on the idea, concerned that it would increase China's influence in Northeast Asia. But its attitude is changing as the power dynamic between Moscow, Beijing and Pyongyang shifts. Russia has grown increasingly dependent on China for trade amid Western sanctions over its invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Energy exports to China have increased. From the Nikkei Asia publication.
If China gains passage to the Sea of Japan through the Tumen River, then not only an economic but also a territorial issue will arise. As experts note, Beijing will be able to send armed Coast Guard ships there and deliver them to the disputed territories in the East China Sea. Japan would then have to divert its own Coast Guard, and this will only further increase tensions in an already troubled region. Reported by Diana Kolesnik, Nikita Skoblikov, UATV News.